Yes, kings and queens, if you're new to the channel, hit subscribe, like, rate, hit the bell, put a comment below. I don't care if it's a horrible one, you know what I mean? Like, you can make fun of anything about me. I'm not that fussed, because you know what? Posy Wazzy 2025, and I still love you. Anyway, tonight, I want to talk openly and frankly, TED Talk style, between you and I as fams. The influence of US boxing. US boxing is dead, right? US boxing is absolutely and utterly on its Gary, right? When I was a kid, it was the Mecca. It was where it was. Caesar's Palace, Mandalay Bay. I've been Mandalay Bay twice. I've been Caesars. I've been MGM. I've been Thomas and Mack. It was a different thing. It was hallowed. It was holy. It was, to a boxing fan, it was where you wanted to go. If you were a fighter, it's where you needed to be. Now it's Riyadh or the UK, in a stadium or an arena. But, so let's just run it over. When I was a young man, okay, boxing has always been a huge TV sport, right? Now, for the States, we're only going to really focus on the States and what's going on in the States, despite being a predominantly British boxing channel. Yes, right? Now, let's have a little look. Boxing has no longer got a place on CBS, ABC, NBC, Fox, the one that hurt more than any of the other ones. For any actual boxing fan out there, when HBO pulled out of boxing, it was heartbreaking. No one believed it. For me, I was just like, oh, that can't be true. That's just like, is it April 1st? You know what I mean? HBO, the single greatest platform to have ever done it. HBO, Jim Lampley, Max Kellerman, Larry Merchant, George Foreman, Roy Jones. Like, it was spectacular. HBO was it. HBO was so good that I would go out of my way, allegedly, to download the HBO feed instead of the Sky one. And despite the Sky one being obviously great, blah, 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 I wanted Jim Lampley. I wanted Larry Merchant. I wanted Roy Jones. I wanted Max Kellerman to a lesser extent. All good, right? HBO was spectacular. Out. No longer a thing. Then the rival, the Coke and Pepsi, let's be honest, HBO was always Coke. Showtime was Pepsi. If you go around someone's house and they offer you a Pepsi, you're just like, oh, mate, whatever. I don't care. Don't care. It's weird that you said, do you want a Pepsi? You know what I mean? Showtime was that. Showtime had fantastic fights. It had some of the great fights out there. Showtime, out. No longer. ESPN are about to lose Top Rank in June, July time. I think Top Rank goes on to DAZN. PBC on Amazon. Amazon are going to be getting rid of that double quick, right? Like, who cares? No one cares. You got it is what it is. US boxing is propped up by a non-US person, which is Canelo, right? Second to that, Tank. Second to that, Ryan Garcia, right? You know, and the US still has a huge talent pool. Devin Haney, like, he's got everything, but not start. Teofimo Lopez, El Loco, but got everything. Like, the list of US talent is enormous, but the platforms to deliver are dwindling, and ever so slightly, when I say slightly, they are eroding like the tide coming out. And now what that means is that Golden Boy are already on DAZN. Fantastic. Top Rank, as we said, are going on DAZN. Fantastic, right? PBC very soon are going to be without a platform, I assume. I would imagine that they only have the option of going on to DAZN, or maybe they do a deal with ESPN, and maybe, who knows, but largely doesn't matter. So with the US boxing market absolutely and utterly on its Gary, there's something that's been bandied around for a very long time, right? Which has been the league, the boxing league. You know, how many times have we heard, I wish boxing was run like the UFC, right? There's a reason that it's not run like the UFC, because it's not the UFC. the UFC is not boxing, boxing is not the UFC. Now, Dana White is a huge boxing fan. He has been a boxing fan forever, right? He's had a little taste of it when he did the stuff with Conor and Floyd. Zuffa boxing was a thing. And now they've been talking for a while about this Saudi-backed boxing league. And for a long time, for boxing fans, you sit there and you go, there's no way that that can work. And then the reason there's no way that can work is that for it to be a global sport, it is so fractured. This video only pertains to the US. This one right here only works for the US. This is all we're talking about here is the US, right? So that in itself is a bit of a weird one when you're dealing with a global sport, okay? So Dana White is part of TKO, the TKO Group, which are the ones that have been talking about doing this Saudi-backed boxing league. The way that the Saudi-backed boxing league happen is if you have the pool and you have the ability to do it. And the main blocking factor of running a boxing league is something called the Ali Act. But I'm going to put on my spectacles. Now I'm super educated and learned, okay? The head of TKO, the head of Endeavour, and the head of WME is a young man called Ari Emanuel, one of the most powerful people in entertainment and sport, bar none. And very recently, he said, Ari Emanuel confirms TKO, that's the group that owns the UFC, the WWE, and now they're having a little dabble at the idea of going into boxing. TKO targeting entry into boxing. Who knows what's going to happen to the Ali Act? Take off my spectacles for a minute. Okay. Now, the Muhammad Ali Act came into play, 2000, I think it got enacted. And the whole point of the Ali Act is to protect the fighters, to stop what goes on in the UFC, positive or negative. I'm not talking that at all. What I'm saying is the reason that you cannot run boxing like the UFC is because of the Ali Act, right? And I'll put my spectacles back on again. And because I'm an absolute chat GPT, look at that, look. Boom. Okay. The Muhammad Ali Reform Act is a US federal law act in 2000, blah, 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 right? The Ali Act is for increased transparency. Promoters are required to disclose financial details of fights to the boxers, including revenue, ticket sales, broadcast deals, and other income sources. Meaning, if you hear that your pay-per-view numbers way exceed what was going on, oh, you have to tell me and you have to pay me my percentage. Boom. Protection against coercive contracts, meaning you can't be tied up to a 15-year contract where you're on just no money, right? Separation of roles. Basically what this crux down to is boxers and managers and promoters, or like that you cannot be the promoter and the manager, right? Fine. They have to have distinct roles and you have to do this to avoid exploitation. Protection from unfair rankings, meaning that if you are the promoter and quote unquote the league, that means that you can dictate who fights for your title, you can dictate who's going to be your champion, etc., etc., etc. Now, as you can see, the Ali Act is a fairly potent spanner in the works if you was to do a boxing style UFC-esque run entity. Except if you were pals with the current president, allegedly, if the current president has a long history of being involved and a combat sports fan, Taj Mahal, no big deal, and you wanted to, you know, really make the US the forefront of everything all over again, which I believe there's a certain saying that we won't be saying on this channel, but it's a thing. then it's not that unfeasible to think that this could happen. And not only could this happen while boxing in that territory is at its absolute lowest. And who's to say if there's not some shadowy, ambiguous, dark art thing where the ring, which is also a promoter, which is also its own champion league and ranking system, who's to say that TKO can't do some sort of advisory role with it? In comes set gloves, set uniforms, set sponsors, basically the UFC model into boxing with the ring at the top or whatever. Like, you're never going to have the Saudis beneath, right? So you're going to get that. And then eventually over time, you have no choice but to go into this league because you're going to get squeezed out. And if Ring Magazine or Ring Promotions is where the money is, and you're not willing to conform to their rules, but these lot are, your fighters as a promoter, a Matchroom, a Queensbury, a boxer for Ben Shalom, Oscar for Golden Boy. If you're not willing to concede to bring your fighters onto this platform under this rule set, who's to say that Dana doesn't become the promoter of promoters? Who's to say that TKO doesn't sit at the top of this league? It's quite interesting to see where this can be going now. And bit by bit, I mean, the sport is the sport. The sport is always going to be the sport. How it's run, what you wear, who sponsors you, that is down to the fighter, right? At the minute. But again, this only sits in the States, and it can't get any lower. It can't get any worse. So maybe this is a very interesting project. Maybe Congress just says, absolutely not. We're not changing the Ali Act, and this all goes away. But in the infinite world of the mentally ill what ifs, what if that did happen? What if that is the case? And what if Dana does actually become what for me, I think he's the single greatest combat sports promoter that there's ever been, right? And I think that he could do good things, but equally he could do as bad things. Let me know what you think in the comments.